We're here this morning with the Siegel Schwall Blues Band after a wonderful evening at the Four Seasons. Thank you, Corky, for joining us this morning. I really appreciate it. A couple of quick questions for you. I know you guys have had a long evening last night and a beautiful breakfast this morning, but can you tell me, what are some of the rewards of being a professional musician? And on the flip side, what would you feel are some of the negatives?
Mm-hmm. Well, the rewards... Well, let's do negatives first. I think negatives would be good to do first. The negative of being a musician is you don't get insurance. There's no insurance. There's no fringe benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no unemployment. And if you're lucky, you get paid. If you're a musician, of course, that has a day job, there's no negatives. So really, there's very few negatives. Because if you're not making enough money being a musician, and you have to get a job, that's not negative. That's just putting you in a good place, because having a job and an income is great. Then you get to play music and you don't have to worry about the money. So the only negative is if you are a struggling musician, you're making a living at it, but not quite enough to live with any kind of comfort at all.
Corky, you've undoubtedly had a remarkable musical career. What would you consider would be your greatest musical achievement?
Musical achievement. Well, I could think of some things that I haven't achieved. It's interesting because when we tend to think of achievement, we tend to think of sort of in terms of success, whether it be success in learning a technique or success in the music business or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I really can't look at that. I mean, I could look at some highlights of my career, but my greatest achievement is anytime I come to, and I'm going to be a little general, if you don't mind.
It's fine.
Anytime I come to a realization about something about music that supports everything I'm doing. And of course this happens, now and again. There's certain things like, today I was telling you about that rhythm thing where I was playing with John Prine and Jethro Burns, the mandolin player, and they both played different rhythm concepts that didn't work with each other, and I had to find a way of playing in between. And that was in the early 70s, and it changed the way I play music, because I had such great excitement when I found out you don't have to play even eighth notes or triplets. You could actually play this whole infinite field between the triplet and the eighth, or anyway. I mean, there's this rhythm grid that we have, and all the spaces in between the grid are beautiful places to be rhythmically.
Right.
And so discovering that was, it was more of a discovery than an achievement. You know what I'm saying? Because I tend to look at any kind of attainment more as a discovery. It's something I tripped over and go, wow, there it is. So that was one, the rhythm and dynamic variation, because, I do workshops in that, loud and soft.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that was a great discovery, great discovery. And I'm still working with the rhythm concept, and I'm still working with dynamic variation. And so, I don't feel like there's something that's been achieved. It's sort of a direction I'm going. And achievement is a goal that is, in my mind, can't be reached.
Beautiful. How would you explain chamber blues to someone who had never heard of it?
Well, first of all, explaining any kind of music or any kind of anything to anybody that they haven't tasted or heard, it's impossible, actually. Let me explain to you what milk tastes like. You never had milk. Well, it's white. It has this chalky, and it's sweet, it's like good luck. The only way is the person has to drink it. And that's true with anything, so I'm just giving you a hard time.
Right, exactly. Wouldn't have expected any less.
Right. So the chamber blues, it's white. No, it's chalky. No, it's first of all instrumentally. That's one level of explaining something. Mm-hmm. So the instrumentation is it's a string quartet, which is 2 violins, viola, and cello. And a string quartet is an amazing experience. I started writing chamber blues in 1983. And right then was about the peak of synthesized music, where a lot of musicians, I mean, they still are, of course, instead of using a string section, they use synthesized strings, drum machines, synthesized trumpets, synthesized harmonicas, whatever. And that really was very, very popular in the 80s. And it probably still is popular. And I just, being a kind of guy that always wanted to offer something different than the mainstream, just, it's just my tendency, felt like here's this amazing experience, all the sweet wooden sounds of all these instruments like the cello and the viola. I wasn't really especially fond of violin, but the blend of those 4 instruments is outrageous, an amazing experience. As a matter of fact, when I have a headache, I just go listen to them rehearse. It makes the headache go away. So, so the string quartet is a beautiful wooden sound. And then the tabla. So instead of trap drums, with the bass drum and the hi-hat and all that, the East Indian tabla offers a nice percussion sound, but it's a wooden sound, and has a lot of different sounds on it, so you could get a little something like on traps, because traps offer you all these different sounds, and tablas have different sounds. It also fits really well with the wooden instruments. So, that's instrumentally. And then there's blues harmonica and blues piano, and maybe a little vocal now and again. And the socio-political contrast there is here's blues, here's classical instrumentation-wise. And of course, just based on the instrumentation alone, people will look at it and go, well, this can't work,
Right.
But then we take it to another level. There's a compositional level. And what it is a juxtaposition, not a blend. Because if we talked about a blend of blues and classical, that would be jazz. Because jazz is very European, very diatonic, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, just straight American scale, European scale. And then blues is a different mode. It uses a different scale. And blues is very linear, melodic. All the harmonies that exist in blues are more coincidental to the melodic. So there's a bass line and a guitar line, and the vocal has a melody. And all those together, they're pretty free, but at any point along the way, there's this harmony, In classical music, it's very harmonic music. Any moment in time in a classical piece of music, what the harmony is, where it came from, and where it's going. And harmony is part of the intent of the music. And it's very, very diatonic, so there's a little contrast between the blues and the classical. There's very little difference in reality. It's just the scale is a little bit different, and the concept of thinking about harmony is a little bit different, and that's about it. So compositionally, what chamber blues does is it offers a juxtaposition of classical and blues. So pretty much at any time during a performance, or many times during a performance, you could hear the classical and the blues at the same time, but they're not blended. They each are holding their own flavor. So that's compositional, and that's instrumental, and that's the two things that is able to describe chamber blues. And blues harmonica, you could sort of get those flavors. Now, people will say that you can't do this. That blues and classical are extremely opposites. But in reality, any kind of music, the most extreme different kinds of music, actually work together very well, because they're basically made of harmonies melodies, pitches, rhythms, articulations, durations. The substance of music, which is the musical elements, that's what makes music work.
Mm-hmm. Well, two of my real favorite Siegel Schwall tunes are Hush Hush and I Think It Was the Wine.
Yeah.
What would you say maybe two of your favorite Siegel Schwall tunes of all time would be?
Right. Well, I like I Think It Was the Wine.
Mm-hmm.
I really love that. Hush Hush is a Jimmy Reed.
Right.
He wrote that song. I think that I just sort of like when I think I'm always thinking of you, darling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always thinking of you, darling.
Mm-hmm. Like that.
I think that's sort of nice. But I don't have any. I mean, the CD, the compilation CD.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of my favorite stuff. Right there.
You had a little influence in what went on there, I imagine.
Oh, completely. Yeah. I mean, the guy from Billboard who really put the thing together. I let him, make some choices that I wouldn't have made.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, it was me, choosing the material.
If a person were to judge Corky Siegel by one song, what song would you make them listen to?
Well, first of all, I'd ask them not to judge me. No, I wouldn't ask them not to judge me. Okay, let's say, good idea. Let's say somebody was going to book Siegel Schwall and they wanted to hear one song. Which one would I play for them?
Right.
Probably, I Don't Want You to Be My Girl with the long harmonica solo.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim has a solo in it. Boom. But, it's hard because with this Siegel Schwall band, with Sam and Rollo and Jim, it's four bands.
Mm-hmm.
It's like four,
Mm-hmm.
So you got to have four songs. So performance-wise, I really love, when Rollo does Long Distance Call,
mm-hmm.
and Sam does Mojo, and Jim does You Don't Love Me Like That.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would say I Don't Want You to Be My Girl, with the harmonica solo. The longer
So you just write a new song that would encompass all four then?
Well, Hush Hush does that.
There you go.
Yeah.
What are your plans for 2004 and beyond?
Right. At this age, you can't make plans. I just have my dessert first. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Well, actually, a lot of recording.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of recording projects. I would like to do. I got a chamber blues thing that's ready to
Mm-hmm.
be mixed. I mean, it's not completely recorded, but 4/5 of it is ready to mix.
Mm-hmm.
So we're ready to do that. And then I have I just discovered 20 songs that I wrote that have never been recorded that I totally forgot about.
Wow.
Really some cool stuff, too. So I wanted to do that. Really unusual stuff. Matter of fact, the reason they weren't recorded is they're so unusual.
Mm-hmm.
They're really strange songs. So I really love them. And then I'm doing a children's record. That's chamber blues.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a story, a couple nice stories in there, and poems.
Beautiful.
Music poems, they're
Mm-hmm.
spoken to music and arrangements and everything. So a lot of really interesting stuff. That it's really not a children's record, other than it seems a couple things in there seem like they're sort of would be written for children, but they weren't. So that one, and then I would like to do a Siegel Schwall recording, another one, and then I'm writing a book which was supposed to be finished at the end of the year, but mostly is the text. But I'm starting to record some of the samples for the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's a book on dynamic variation called "Jumping Off the Clef."
Oh, beautiful. That's an interesting name.
Yeah.
Well, in wrapping it up, I have one final question for you. Of all the amateur musicians you ever played with while you were on the road, what was the most exciting time?
Last night. Oh, no. Actually, no, I'm mistaken. because those weren't amateur musicians.
Oh, I see. Okay. Corky, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Martin Mullins.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We're with Rollo Radford of the Siegel Schwall Band. Rollo, thank you very much for a wonderful evening last night and for joining us here this afternoon. I'd like to ask you started off your career very young, and I'd like you to tell me just a little bit about how you got into the blues music and music in general.
Well, my father was a musician, and he played all around in the bars in Chicago, and he played with everybody around in the city. And he even played with people like Billie Holiday and Anita O'Day and stuff. When they would come to town, sometimes he would play with them. And he would always have musicians at the house, and they would come to rehearse, or when they come to town, they come to the house and rehearse, and then they go and play their music jobs. And so he played keyboards, he played vibra harp, he played drums, and he played bass, and he had all these old instruments laying around the house. But his latest one was the keyboard. He even made a keyboard himself he took old parts of a piano and took it and he put rubber bands in it and all kinds of stuff and made an organ out of it. And used to play music jobs with this thing. And he was an amazing person. And so from having those instruments around the house, I don't know why I gravitated to bass, but they had me take piano lessons when I was real little. And I couldn't get the hang of it because I had to play with both hands, and I didn't want to learn. I just wanted to learn to play with one hand, and they said, no, that won't work. So piano wasn't for me. And for some reason, when I was about 14, I picked up the bass violin, and, he had an old one laying around the house, and so I used to just practice with this thing. I'd come in from school and maybe do my homework, and I would just practice into the night and go eat my dinner or something and go play some more. I'd put on a record, or Ahmed Jamal record and something, and listen to Israel Crosby or somebody, and I would try to play like they played on there. And I taught myself how to play. And that's how I kind of started. I got in the band in high school, and, I almost got in the band, I would say. I wanted to play in the band, and they had 4 bass players and 3 basses. And mine had gotten damaged at home. I had knocked it over. I was playing and broke it into a lot of pieces. And so I didn't have one to play on anymore. And so they didn't have enough basses for me to play. And so they gave me a bass drum stick and said, okay, you got to play bass drum in the band. And somebody broke in my locker and stole that, so it just didn't work. And when I got a job working in a department store when I was old enough. I was about to graduate from high school, around the time that I graduated. And my first job, I said, I'm going to buy me a bass. And I bought an Ampeg baby bass, I'll never forget. And because I could play rock and roll jobs and play jazz, I wanted something that I could play both with, because this is the only bass I'm going to have. And that was what I started with.
Rollo, can you tell me a little bit about your involvement with the Chamber Blues Project?
With the Chamber Blues Project? Okay, I had known Corky, and we had played together and made all those records in the 70s together. And I had put together this Chamber Blues group, and I had heard, about what he was doing and the kind of stuff that he was doing. And he wanted me to sort of just do a little, every now and then do a guest spot or something like that. I don't know why he never added a bass violin. Well, for a while, I think he did have a bass violin player that played the bass violin. But why he didn't have one and keep it in there, I didn't know why. And so, as it turned out, I would just kind of just come in every now and then and just, sort of jam with him. Sometimes I'd use my bass, or sometimes I would just come and sing. And he asked me to do that. And so I did do that with the Chamber Blues.
Right. Rollo, tell me, what is one or two of your favorite lines from the Siegel Schwall library? lyrics from a couple of the tunes. What are one of your or two of your favorite lyrics?
Oh, I don't know whether I have any favorite lyrics because, excuse me, most of the time I'm trying to remember what they are. So I don't even know. Sometimes I get lost in the middle of the song and I have to make up some lyrics or something. So to be honest with you, I mean, I'd be lucky if I could remember some lyrics to make the song correct or anything.
You seem to remember all the lyrics in Long Distance Call last night.
Oh, did I? I would never. I always feel self-conscious. I mean, it's a great song. It's such a great song, and it's done by Muddy Waters. I mean, I know I could never do it as well as Muddy. I mean, I have to just formulate some other kind of way where I could navigate through the song, and so I just do the best that I can. And just hope for the best. I mean, that's the way it goes.
Beautiful. Well, Rollo, thank you very much for a wonderful evening last night. And again, I thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Here with Sam Lay with the Siegel Schwall Blues Band last night. Thank you for joining us, Sam. Appreciate you taking the time out this afternoon.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you, Sam, what do you feel is different in playing, say, in the 60s and the 70s as opposed to playing today?
I feel the music, the 60s and the 70s until today, a lot of it I don't understand. Mainly rap. I don't understand rap. I don't understand what it's all about. But I'm from the old school. I just like this straight Delta blues, and I love country and bluegrass music. I'm also a lover of country and bluegrass and music such like the 1950 rock and roll style.
Right.
But the difference is just I really couldn't explain it. It just changed so much.
It's a big difference.
I couldn't say why, but.
Well, you've been inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame and the Jazz Hall of Fame. What would you say, which one of those would describe you best as a drummer, let's say?
I think both. It's a combination of the both.
Combination of both styles. Huh?
Yes.
What led you to the blues, Sam?
The blues itself, actually. On the streets of Cleveland, Ohio, back in the late 50s, just out somewhere on a Saturday when I wasn't working. I was working for a steel plant, but on the weekend I had off. And those places, little neighborhood places, had a harmonica, a guitar, and drums. That was a whole band. And I heard this stuff, and it just, I've always had somewhat of a liking for it, but I think then it just really clicked in. It really clicked in. Just, hanging around the wine joints. We had most of the wine joints in Cleveland. And it kind of took off from there. Yeah.
Do you have any advice at all for young musicians who are just starting out in today's music scene?
Well, it all depends on what they're playing. I couldn't advise them into, some of the types of music that I'm not into playing. I love music. Again, I said about rap, I just don't understand it. But if I could advise them if they're going into traditional and Delta blues, I could give them a little advice. It all depends.
You've played with many legends over the years. You were mentioning some to me last night. Why don't you just tell me about some of the people you've played with over the past few years?
The one person that I've stayed with the longest was Howlin' Wolf. I was with him 6 or 7 years straight through. I played with Lil Walter, Hound Dog Taylor. Some with recorded with Muddy Waters, as the drummer on Fathers and Son.
Right.
John Lee Hooker, Lightning Hopkins. I think it might be easier for me to name the ones that I didn't.
And of course, Bob Dylan gave you a great tribute.
I was the drummer on the recording of Highway 61.
That's beautiful. Well, Sam, I want to thank you very much for coming to London, Ontario, and sharing what a wonderful evening that we had with your friends in Siegel Schwall, and we hope you come back real soon to join us again.
And I think we was the one that had the ball last night. We're glad y'all appreciate us having the ball there, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Sam. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Take care.
Very welcome.
We're with Jim Schwall of the Siegel Schwall Blues Band. Thanks for joining us, Jim. I appreciate that. What I wanted to ask you was, as a guitar player, what would you say your greatest influences were?
Starting out, I started playing during the folk revival, which for some reason all the books say started in the 60s, and I know that's not true because I was well into it. I got out of high school in 60, and I was already playing guitar by then, and I'd already been through the, learning Peter Palmer and stuff and everything. That was kind of like, that got old in a hurry. I started looking for something more, and it took me off in a lot of different directions. In those days, I played in bluegrass bands and all kinds of stuff like that. That's all still in high school, so it's in the 50s. But some of it took me into listening to blues, and initially, I think some of the biggest things. I mean, aside from the ones everybody would probably mention. Big Joe Williams and also Big Bill Brunsey, because they were the two guys that were in Chicago at the time, and I could go see them. Big Joe was around for a big chunk of that time, and I could see them live. I mean, there are a lot of guys I heard on records, heard Lightning Hopkins and everybody, but those two guys, because they were around. I only heard Brunsey twice. The second time he couldn't sing. He had throat cancer, and he could barely bark out some of the lyrics, but he was still playing. Just amazing. I mean, it's incredible stuff he was doing. And then and Big Joe, that was straight from the Delta kind of stuff. That's really where I started, and it was that led me into some of the other stuff. Hadn't because I was coming out of this folk clubs and folk festivals and stuff like that. USC had a big one. University of Chicago had a big one every year, and I would travel to other places, go up to Ann Arbor, and for the festivals, and I'd see these people, but I never really saw the electric players until later. After I started getting into being part of the the scene in Chicago and getting out and getting to the clubs, then I ran into some people like Kester down at Delmark Records. After one little gig, he dragged Big Joe Williams and me and I think there's a couple other people, and dragged us all down to Pepper's. First time I went to Pepper's to see Muddy Waters band. And whoa! I mean, I'd heard those old records, I'd heard those Stovall's Plantation records and stuff. And then I walked in, and he's got this like 7-piece band, man, and they Kester was kind of a hero at that place because he'd prevented a little incident down there one time, and so they the owners down there, they really liked him. So Johnny got us a table. We're right up in front. All through we're there for like 25 minutes, and the whole 25 minutes, Big Joe's yelling across the table something at me. I couldn't make out what he was saying. I mean, he had a Mississippi accent that was so thick you could cut it, but but still, I mean, he's sitting right there. I should be able to hear him. I couldn't hear him. Finally, the band takes a break. I leaned over and said, "What were you telling me?" And he goes, "It's too loud." But that was enough. Sammy Lawhorn was doing most of the guitar solo work in that band at that time. And he just went, "Oh, man, that was just an awakening." Wow. And I went, "Oh, there's something different you can do with a guitar." So then I started getting out and seeing the other people. Biggest influences initially Buddy Guy and Otis Rush. Buddy, for the sheer damn craziness of everything he did. I mean, you always had this feeling that he never knew from one second to the next if he was gonna, like go low in the neck, go high in the neck, throw the guitar against the wall, leave. You never knew. You just never knew what he was gonna do. It was so spontaneous. And Otis, because unlike a lot of the other players, he didn't play riffs. I mean, he played all the same, all that stuff that was all kind of boiled down from B.B. King and everything. Mm-hmm. But there was something different about it. He played like he sang, like you sing. The notes all connected. They all had a shape. And when you'd think about it later, you'd realize that this 12 bars wasn't like this little lick and this little lick and this little lick. The whole 12 bars had a shape to it, and it was going somewhere. It always knew where he was going. And we had a mutual admiration society going. I hung out with him every chance I got.
As an electric blues band, you play lead guitar and it's an acoustic guitar. Tell us a little bit about your guitar.
Well, initially that was because I had it. I didn't have an electric guitar. I had that guitar, and so that's what I started playing. I obtained it in high school. Obtained is really the word. And it just, it was there, and I was used to playing on it. And I have another guitar that I still have, the two guitars that I've, had for like 40-some years, that's never had a pickup on it, but I put the pickup on this one. Mm-hmm. And in those days, I went down to lighter strings, electric weight strings, so I could push notes around more. And it's only, I was a punk, and I wasn't strong enough to push heavy strings around. So, which Otis did, by the way. He used acoustic weight strings, and still bent them like that. Wow. There's a reason for that, but he's pulling down on him instead of pushing up. Because he had the guitar upside down. It was kind of a bizarre thing. Now, the first time I played his guitar, it scared the hell out of me. We played together, and then one night I walked into a club and he called me up on stage, and it occurred to me I'd never really paid much attention to whether he changed the order of the strings on that guitar or not. I didn't know if he strung it upside down or just turned it around and played it. And it turned out he did just play it and turn it around and play it, so I was able to play his guitar. That would have been a mess if I couldn't.
What do you think of the music currently being produced today?
It's so, there's so much happening. The genres are gone. Everything is all possibilities are open. Corky and I were talking the other day about David Amram, who is, kind of was very unusual for him to be doing what he was doing back in the 60s, which was combining elements of classical music and jazz and music from other parts of the world. Mm-hmm. And, it was almost kind of a hippy-dippy thing to be doing at that time. Mm-hmm. That's so common now that the boundaries between different kinds of music are just gone, and it sometimes seems like the only way you can really create something new is to find a new way of combining things. I think what I'm happiest with about the music that's being played now is that a lot of the real straight ahead forms still work and are still really valid. The singer-songwriters are still turning out incredible stuff. Mm-hmm. One guy will disappear, but Eric Bogle will somebody will turn up, and jazz the same kind of. I think it's the same in a lot of different areas. As far as the acoustic blues stuff, I don't really see that lasting forever. I have a kind of funny feeling that once the guys who've been doing it for 40, 50 years, the Paul Jeremiahs and those kind of guys, are gone. Plus the last of the original players,
Right.
the last of the, I don't know. I don't even. It's hard to remember who's even still alive.
Right.
Electric blues, that is strong. That is just so strong. There's just you got these Deborah Coleman types and stuff there. There's always every year it seems like you've got a new player, and of course the recording techniques have gotten so good. The equipment's gotten better. I did end up with an electric guitar for a while. Played it quite a bit for I guess 10 years or 12 years or so. And it was only because it got to a point where people were building these instruments that were just undeniable. They would do stuff, that was impossible on old electric guitars. I had some guys I knew up in Michigan that used to retrofit their electronics into a Stratocaster and give it to you and switch it on and let you play it for a second. And then come up and hold a neon sign next to it, and nothing would happen. I just went, oh my God! That was one of the things. Playing a bar with a Stratocaster and there's beer signs all around. It's just you hit the volume, this hum comes up. But this is it. They used the Stratocaster just to make the point that well, we've got better technology than that now. We don't need to put up with all that noise.
Unbelievable. Tell me how and when the Siegel Schwall band originally formed.
Oh, well, it started as a duo, actually. It started as Siegel and Schwall. And we, there was no name for it in those days. We changed the name depending on where we were playing. Sometimes we use our first names, sometimes our last names, and whatever. We were both in a music school in Chicago, Chicago Musical College, which is part of Roosevelt University. And it was a old-style conservatory at that time. And but they had a couple little different things that were happening. It was still violins and clarinets, for the most part. They didn't have an electronic studio. I got into electronic composition by setting up a studio at the Art Institute because the music school wouldn't let me do it. But they did have this one guy, and if I remember right, his name was Lane Emery, and he was a jazz guy basically, and he had his courses that he taught, and he wanted to have some jazz courses, and they wouldn't let him do it for credit initially, but they let him have a laboratory band, a jazz lab band. And that's where I met Corky. Lane would Shanghai you if you came into his course, and he discovered you could play an instrument he needed. Well, Corky, I don't know if he told you this, but he was a tenor sax player, so naturally he got Shanghai. And then I got in one of his courses, and he said, "Play guitar? Fine, I need a guitar player. Better be down there, on Tuesday night." And kind of let you know you better show up for rehearsals if you wanted to get a good, get an A in this course or something like that. And it was pretty crazy because I hadn't played jazz. I'd never played jazz. I'd grown up listening to jazz, but it never occurred to me to try to play it. And they throw this chart up there, and I look at this first thing and I see the B flat ninth with a the flat fifth or something, and I'm going, let's see, well, here's the B flat, I can get the ninth here, maybe if I do it this way I can get the flat fifth. And of course by then they're like halfway through the chart, I'm like, hey look, gee, it was pretty nuts. It was pretty pathetic. I got into it eventually and figured out what was happening, but after about the second or third rehearsal, we're riding down the elevator, and Corky figured out that wasn't my background, and he takes a harmonica out of his shirt and tosses it to me. He says, "What can you do with this?" So I play a little harmonica, and he goes, So we started playing around, and as a duo. He would play piano and harmonica like he's doing now, except with a bass drum underneath the piano. And I'd play guitar, and I got a pickup for my guitar. And one of a series. I had a series of really terrible pickups. And then sometimes we would do things where he would stand up and, just feature the harmonica, and then I'd go sit on the piano bench so I could work the bass drum, When we went to Peppers, one point Corky said, let's go try and get a gig there. And I'd already, and I'd been there actually a few times by then. Well, I don't know if they'll hire us, but let's go give it a whirl. And we went down and played down there, and Johnny goes, well, yeah, I'll give you a job, but you can't work here like this. You're going to have to get a bass and drum player. Mm. And he gave us one night of the week. He gave us like Tuesday night, I think it was, or something like that. And the band that had been playing on Tuesday night was, I think, one of Buddy Guy's groups. And since he wasn't going to do it anymore, we just took his bass and drum player. That was the initial Siegel Schwall band. Then, time goes by and other people ended up being in the band, but that was the initial Siegel Schwall band was every Tuesday night at Pepper's Show Lounge in 63rd and Vincennes.
And when did you pick the Madman Rollo up? When would that have happened?
Oh, that came along later. We played through the late 60s and disbanded. We were in San Francisco, and we actually moved there and just gave it a rest, and ended up back in Chicago because we had a thing to do with the symphony. Mm-hmm. It happened about that time. And I came back and then stayed in Chicago, and neither of us was doing much a year later. So we decided to try it again. We reformed a band. And for a while, first it was Sam and another bass player, and then pretty quickly we replaced the bass player with Raul. So this band is actually the same as it was in about 1970, I guess, about 70. And then a little while later, we started to travel again, and Sam was doing other things at the time and had a business and couldn't go with us, so we ended up doing most of the recording during the 70s with a different drummer, with Shelley Blackton. Mm-hmm. When we started doing the reunions, Shelley was pretty sick. He's since died. Right. But he was already pretty sick at that time, in '88, I think it was. So we went back. We backed up one drummer.
Perfect. Well, Jim, I want to thank you very much for a wonderful evening last night, and thank you very much for joining us in the studio. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.